The value of a good waterfront education before buying property in Cape Coral cannot be understated, and the cost of actually buying something before you have a certain base level of knowledge is extremely high. I have a story to tell you about that. Let's talk about it. Hey everybody, my name is David Myers. I sell waterfront property in Cape Coral, as I have done since way back in the early 2000s, 2003, when I was first licensed. And back in the old days, I used to have a sit down with every single one of my waterfront buyers. The very first thing that we did when they came to town was they would come into the office and sit down, and we would talk about the lay of the land, and I'd get an idea from them of what was most important. Real estate was done largely differently back then. There weren't all these online tools where people could do all their own research. These days, a lot of people do their own research, and then they'll come to town and look at homes and make a decision. And unfortunately, if the agent with whom they're working is not very well versed in the waterfront, or isn't a boater, or just doesn't have much experience, then I've heard all kinds of different stories over the years of people buying the wrong house. And a lot of the buyers that I work with, and sellers with whom I work who are local, are making a move because they purchased a house, and then over the period of some time they realized that they really should be somewhere different. I remember speaking to a couple in the Rubicon chain who decided to buy a boat with a flybridge, and then they lived behind a fixed bridge, and when they wanted to buy this Beneteau flybridge boat, it no longer, they couldn't park it behind their house because it wouldn't fit under the bridge. A lot of times people go for a ride on a sailboat, and then they say, hey, the sailing thing seems nice. And if they do own a house behind a fixed bridge, they have to sell it and incur all the closing costs and the hassle of selling to move onto the good side of a bridge. And a lot of times you can't foresee those things in all instances, I mean, who would know? I mean, I have a sailboat now. I love it. But when I was younger, in my younger days, every time I bought a boat, I wanted it to go at least 50 or 60 miles an hour. Who would have thought that I would be a sailboat guy? But those types of things happen. And in some instances, you can't foresee that. But the story that I'm going to tell you could have been avoided, and it's extremely unfortunate. But I want to tell this story just so that you can get an idea of how badly this can possibly go. All right, now I don't want to scare you, but this is what happened to this guy. I met a guy who, and we were talking about boat ramps, and a friend of mine had his fuel system was in need of, he had water in the fuel, bad, and the boat had to be taken out. And we were talking about boat ramps, and this guy was saying that he uses the ramp down by Rum Runners. And down by Rum Runners restaurant down there in Cape Harbor, they have a boat ramp, and it costs $20 to launch your boat. And then we were talking about how there's actually no parking for that ramp down there. And I told the guy that he should buy a waterfront house because, that's what I do. And every time someone talks about boat ramps, I was talking about how they should park their boat behind their house. Well, it turns out that this guy did live on the water. But the way that it all went down is 2 or 3 years ago, he came to Cape Coral to buy a forever house with his wife. And his dream was to go fishing, and her dream was to lay by the pool. So they ended up buying a house in the Southwest, but it's in the very northern regions of the Southwest. And they didn't do any calculations on how exactly far away it was from open water. So they bought the house. It turned out that it needed a seawall. They replaced the seawall. They put in a new dock, and they remodeled the kitchen. And those projects were 1 year after the next. And in the third year, he bought a boat. And then when he took the boat to his house, it took nearly 2 hours to get back to his house. And I'd done minutes to the river calculations for people, loads of times. I never even realized how far up that was and how many miles it was. But when you measure it out, if you go into Google Maps and measure it out, or into Lipa, it's nearly 8 miles to get from the back of this house just to open water. And then once you get to open water, now he has a bay boat. So in a bay boat, if you come out where the Southwest properties come out, through where the lock used to be and down by Glover's Bight. You don't have to go through the channel at Glover's Bight. You could just cut across the sandbar over there. But it's still, if you were going to Tarpon Bay to get bait to fish at Chino Island, it would take you, it's nearly 8 miles just to the open water, and then it's 1.7 through the Shell Island Cut Slow Zone, and another probably 0.3 from the exit of the neighborhood to the actual channel in the river, making it a 10-mile trip from the back of this dude's house to where he could actually get the boat up on plane. And he's an older guy, and his boat doesn't have any toilet facilities, so he can't even make it from the back of his house to where he would need to get on plane. It's 2 hours. So if you want to go fishing, there are no impromptu fishing trips unless he was going to go just fish the mangroves along the spreader. If he actually wants to go anywhere out in open water on the boat, it's a 10-mile trip just to get to the point where he can get the boat on the plane, unless he's going north. And if he's going north, the only really places to fish, the first place, I guess you could fish over at the mouth of Paulmakers. There's Whiskey Creek. But still, it takes so long to get from the back of this guy's house on the boat to anywhere that he would actually fish, that he trailers the boat from his waterfront home down to the boat ramp at Rum Runners, and he basically runs his boating operation as if he didn't live on the water, because it's just too far from where he lives to get there. I sold a lot last month to a couple who live probably as far up into that canal chain as he does, and they just bought a house down on El Dorado because, it's so much closer to the river. So I did a video before a couple of years ago, I think, on minutes to the river and why that's important. But I just want to implore you, if you're looking at waterfront property, you have to realize that if you're too far away from open water, if it takes you an hour or more to get to open water, you're never going to use your boat, especially not like you would if you were 15 or 20 minutes away. And obviously the land value of properties that are 15 or 20 minutes from open water are a lot higher than the ones way back up in the canal chain. But if you're going to be as far back as he is, it's not worth spending money on waterfront. You'd be better off buying a house in an off-water community somewhere if trailing your boat is going to be what you end up doing anyway. And unless you like just canal cruising by a pontoon boat and just cruising the canals and never get to the river, or if you're just buying the house for view, or if you just like the ambiance of waterfront but don't care about actually using a boat, then it's one thing. You can buy your waterfront property way back up in the canal system and it doesn't matter. But if you actually want to do like what he does, like fishing, and if he lived 15 minutes from the river, he would do probably impromptu nightly fishing trips. Fish down along the mangroves between Unit 3 and, like just down around the bottom of either between Unit 3 and Glover's Bight over there. You could go catch some snook over there, or even just the mangroves on the outside of, the Rum Runners neighborhood, 64, 67, and where the Southwest comes out. But being so far back up in the chain, that it's just like a heartbreaking story, because the wife is in love with the house and doesn't want to move. When they bought it, their interest rate was exceptionally low, and if they have to duplicate that now, it's going to cost them too much, because A, they have to spend more to get closer, and B, the interest rate now is at a rate where it's not financially feasible. So he's living on the water in the Southwest Cape. He bought a house that had, in the MLS, it said no bridges. And it's true, there are no bridges. I think the wires up there are 55 feet. I could actually fit my sailboat all the way up there. But, in the amount of time that it would take, if it took me 2 hours to get the sailboat out to the river, and then another, because the sailboat is no wake, like in any circumstance. The sailboat goes 6 miles an hour, best case scenario, 7. So it's just too dang far to be able to use it. It would make no sense unless you're every time you took the sailboat out, you went to the Bahamas or to Key West or somewhere super far away. Then there would be no impromptu sailboat rides. And for this guy, like I said, he trailers his boat, which is terrible, especially considering what he was thinking of when he purchased the waterfront property. So, I mean, in order to mitigate this, you have to actually do the calculations on how far whatever property you're looking at is from open water, and really do an assessment on, will this work? Would I use my boat if I had to traverse a 1 hour canal ride in order to get to the river? I mean, and you may still use it on the weekends, but you're not going to use it impromptu like you would if you were on the backside of Coral, Dolphin, or Bayshore, or somewhere down in the yacht club where you could actually get, from your house out into the river and through the actual channel, in 12 to 15 minutes. It's a totally different story. You could use your boat all the time. When friends could show up in the evening and you'd say, hey, let's, have the wife go cut up some cheese and get some crackers and a bottle of wine ready, and I'll go drop the boat off the lift, and we'll go out and watch the sunset. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that makes living on the water fun, when you could just impromptu go use your boat. Or, like you just look at your phone and there's the tide chart, and you can see that it's the top of an incoming tide and it's about to go out, and you just call up a buddy and say, hey, come on over, we'll throw the rods in the boat and go catch a snook, and that you can be to one of 10 different spots in half an hour. It's like you will end up using your boat a lot more. And I totally get it. Not everybody has, I'm going to do more of it. I'm actually, this has like really inspired me to take my Waterfront Buyer's Guide and do a video series based on that. Because I want people to have this information. Like, hearing a story like this is terrible because this guy can't remedy the situation now. His wife's in love with the house. They already spent too much money on the dock and the seawall. They remodeled the kitchen, and the interest rate, it puts him in a position where he doesn't have a second chance to duplicate what he did before. If he would have bought a house, 3 years ago in the right spot, maybe the house would have been less spectacular, but the location would have actually made it conducive for him to do what it is that he wanted to do on the water. And in the end, that's really one of the most important things. So if you're thinking about buying waterfront property and you want some insight like this, I really recommend that you start with my Waterfront Buyer's Guide. You can go to CapeCoralWaterfrontBuyersGuide.com and download a copy of that. It's 20 pages. It gives you a good overview of what makes one waterfront property more valuable than the next one. I also have a buyer's process video on this channel that goes over the entire process of buying a waterfront home, so that you can do a little bit of homework there and not do things out of order. Like, try to do due diligence during a period of time when you really need to be taking action. And that'll make more sense once you watch that presentation. It's a long one. It's over 45 minutes, but it's totally worth it if you're going to be spending, north of $500,000 on a property. This is information that you have to have before you do that. This is why every other thing that you buy in the world that's valuable, there's a book and a brochure and all kinds of information that you can access readily. But when you buy a waterfront house, there isn't necessarily that book of knowledge out there. So that's why I put that book together, because every time I would meet with people and we'd have to go over all this stuff, it was just so nice to have it able to be delivered ahead of time so that they can get that product knowledge in their own time, so that when we come to look at property, we can make the most effective use of the time, and they're already up to speed on what makes one property worth more than the other and how the process works. The only other thing that I would highly recommend is to get set up with a feed of sold properties, like actual closed deals, so that you can see what properties are actually selling for. Because I know Realtor.com and sites like that they're kind of not set up for you to get the most information. They're set up to give you enough information so that you need to call an agent, and then they have agents that they're selling leads to who may or may not know the waterfront, with whom they'll put you in touch. So those three things really eliminate a lot of the risks you can take in buying the wrong waterfront property like this gentleman did. The Cape Coral Waterfront Buyer's Guide, which you can get at capecoralwaterfrontbuyersguide.com, and then the buying process video, which is on this channel. And then if you want to get set up with a feed of closed sales, when you download the book, you automatically get on the feed. I'll email it to you every Wednesday, all the closed sales that happen on the waterfront. All right? If there's anything that you need, if you're looking at waterfront property and you have questions, the best way to get a hold of me is just send me a text, 239-529-0555. That's 239-529-0555. Send me a text and ask me whatever questions you have. I'll get back to you right away. Other than that, I'm gonna put together a video series explaining the Cape Coral map. Cape Coral is a huge city. It's 110 or 120 square miles. It's like twice the size of the city of Detroit. It's really big. And there are 400 miles of canals, which sounds like a good thing. But if you're on one of the canals that feels like it's 400 miles inland, it could really, be a bummer to have to go through all that canal system just to use your boat. And chances are you never will, or you'll end up like the guy I was talking about who's living on the water and trailering his boat to a boat ramp, like a guy who doesn't live on the water. All right, so if there's anything I can do for you, just reach out. Like I said, more videos coming soon on the maps and the neighborhoods. I'll go over the pros and cons of all the neighborhoods and the map layout so you can get a feel for that. And until then, I'll see you out on the waterfront.